The announcement came without warning, echoing across the entire galaxy in a ripple of shock. The Galactic Council, the most powerful governing body in the known universe, had decided humanity was no longer fit to travel among the stars. For centuries, humans had dreamed of space travel, and after years of hard work, they had finally established themselves as explorers in the vastness of the cosmos. But now, all of that had been swept away in a single decision. Earth was banned. No more human ships in space, no more exploration beyond their own atmosphere. The Galactic Council had issued its decree, and humanity was forced to obey. The news hit the Earth like a tidal wave. Governments scrambled to make sense of the ruling, while citizens stared in disbelief. To most, the thought of humans being banned from space seemed impossible. They had fought, bled, and sacrificed to gain a place in the intergalactic community. Yet, the Council had deemed them unworthy. At first, many believed it to be a misunderstanding. Maybe it was a mistake. After all, humanity had always had an important role in the galaxy's politics and economics. They were known for their adaptability, their creativity, and their ingenuity. Earth had contributed to the Galactic Alliance in ways that few others had. Humanity was no longer the chaotic species it once was. So why this sudden ban? The official statement from the Galactic Council was cold and impersonal. Humanity has failed to prove its maturity in the eyes of the stars. Due to repeated violations of galactic law and growing instability, all human activities in space are henceforth prohibited. Effective immediately, no human will be permitted to travel beyond the confines of Earth. As soon as the broadcast ended, chaos erupted. Protests broke out in the streets of major cities, with people demanding answers. Scientists and politicians alike were confused. Why were they being punished? What had humanity done that was so bad that the Council would impose such an extreme measure? The truth, however, was more complicated than anyone knew. Hidden deep within the political world of the Galactic Council was a group that had been watching humanity for years. This group believed that humanity's unchecked growth was a threat to the stability of the entire galaxy. They saw how humans had expanded rapidly, colonizing new planets, building advanced technologies, and making allies across the galaxy. To them, it was too much, too fast. Humanity had surpassed a line that the Council had set for other species. Earth had become a power that could one day challenge the very foundations of galactic rule. As the news spread, the governments of Earth scrambled to find a way to respond. Leaders from every corner of the globe convened in emergency meetings. Some advocated for diplomacy, hoping that the Council would reconsider. Others believed that the ban could not be ignored. Their hands were tied. The Council's power was absolute, and there was little that Earth could do to reverse the decision. But there were others who felt a different kind of anger. These were the voices of the dissidents, the rebels, the ones who had never trusted the Council in the first place. They believed the Council had long seen humanity as a threat. To them, the ban was simply the beginning of the end, a way for the Council to suppress Earth and make sure humans never reached their full potential. The more radical thinkers among them argued that it wasn't just a ban, it was a warning to Earth that their time had come. One such voice belonged to Victor Allen, a retired Marine who had once fought on Earth's borders and beyond. He had seen firsthand the violence and corruption that could fester within the Council, and now he could see the same thing happening to humanity. With his military background and deep understanding of space warfare, he knew the ban was only the first step. The Council would not stop at banning humanity from space. They would try to strip Earth of its power, its influence, its very identity. Victor had seen enough. He wasn't the type of man to sit idly by while his world was attacked. He had spent years training for a day like this, a day when humanity would have to fight for its survival. But he didn't want to fight in the open. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, he would build a resistance, a secret faction that could strike back when the time was right. In the hours following the Council's announcement, he gathered a small group of like-minded individuals. They were scientists, former military officers, engineers, and hackers. People who had always believed that Earth had the potential to reclaim its place among the stars. They began to make plans. They had to be careful. The Council was powerful, and their spies were everywhere. Any move they made would be watched closely. The first step was clear: gather as much intelligence as possible about the Council's operations, especially their communication networks. Victor knew that if they could cripple the Council's ability to track and monitor Earth, they would have a chance to strike back. But even as they began their covert preparations, the people of Earth were not idle. Across the globe, the band stirred something in them. Something deep. Humanity's spirit, once thought to be tamed by the cold, vast universe, was beginning to rise again. It wasn't just a ban on space travel. It was a slap in the face. The people of Earth had always fought for their place in the world, and now they had to fight for their place in the stars. As the days went on, the rebellion began to take shape. The world was waking up. The Galactic Council may have thought they could control humanity, but they had underestimated one thing: the human spirit. The same spirit that had carried Earth to the edge of the galaxy was now waking up, ready to reclaim its rightful place among the stars. And so, the battle began. Not with weapons or armies, but with will. Earth would not bow down, and they would not be silenced. The fight for the future of humanity had only just begun. Victor Allen sat at his desk, the dim glow of his computer screen casting shadows across his face. He could hear the low hum of activity around him, hacked communications flowing in, data being decrypted, and the occasional murmur of voices from the small group of rebels he had assembled. Earth's rebellion was now in full swing, but it wasn't just about fighting the Galactic Council. It was about surviving, finding their place in the universe once again, and proving that humanity would not be controlled. In the wake of the ban, the human race had been thrown into uncertainty. But rather than break, it had sparked something deeper within them, a drive to fight back. People from all walks of life had begun to organize, share information, and strategize. Not everyone was on board, of course. The media, controlled by powerful corporate interests and council sympathizers, spread misinformation, painting the rebellion as a foolish endeavor. They said humanity would never be able to fight against the might of the Galactic Council. But Victor knew better. He had fought in wars before, both on Earth and in space, and the Council's power was not as invincible as they made it seem. Behind their polished exterior, their fleets of warships, and their vast network of spies, they were vulnerable. No empire, no matter how advanced, could maintain control forever. History had proven that. And now, it was humanity's turn to prove it once more. Victor had been busy these last few days, organizing small cells of rebels across the globe. They were a quiet force, hidden in plain sight. Some of them were former military, some were hackers, and others were scientists who had once worked for the Council but had been disillusioned by its tyranny. They shared one common goal: to free humanity from the suffocating grip of the Galactic Council. One of Victor's most trusted allies was Dr. Elena Singh, a former Council scientist who had worked on advanced technologies for space exploration. She had access to classified data on technologies that had been buried by the Council for decades, and that information was now critical to their cause. She had been working in secret, going through old archives, searching for something, anything, that could give humanity the edge they needed. One day, as the rebellion grew stronger, Elena stumbled upon a series of old blueprints. They were ancient, marked with codes and symbols long forgotten by most of the galaxy. But they were exactly what she had been looking for. Blueprints for a hyperdrive engine that could enable ships to travel faster than any existing technology. It was a game changer. If they could find a way to build this engine, Earth could challenge the Council's fleet, and possibly even outrun them. But there was a catch. The technology was incomplete. The designs were only half finished, and the key components were scattered across different planets, some of which were now under Council control. Elena knew that retrieving these components would be dangerous. Each planet had a strong military presence, and the Council would stop at nothing to prevent Earth from gaining any advantage. Yet there was no turning back. If they wanted to win, they had to find these parts. Victor's mind raced. He knew that this technology could be the turning point they desperately needed. A hyperdrive engine wasn't just a way to escape. It was a way to fight back. With the right weapons, Earth's ships could strike anywhere in the galaxy, bypassing Council patrols and attacking their weak points. The idea of hitting the Council where it hurt was too tempting to ignore. Victor quickly gathered his team and laid out the plan. There was no room for mistakes. They would need to operate under the radar, stealing key components, and then vanishing into the darkness of space before anyone could stop them. It was risky, but it was the only option they had. If they failed, the rebellion would be crushed, and humanity's dreams of space would be snuffed out forever. The first target was Rion, a desolate mining planet at the edge of known space. Once a thriving colony, it had now become a fortress for the Council. The planet was strategically important. Its mines held valuable resources, and the Council had stationed a sizable fleet there. For the rebellion, it was the perfect place to begin their operations. Not only was it far from Earth, but it also housed one of the key components needed to finish the hyperdrive engine. Victor knew that getting to Rion wouldn't be easy. It was a place where the Council kept a close eye on things, and they wouldn't tolerate any unauthorized ships near their territory. But with Alina's knowledge of the Council's operations, they had a chance. She had obtained schematics of the planet's defenses, showing weak spots in their security systems. There were gaps in their surveillance that the rebellion could exploit. Victor gathered his team once again. The stakes were higher than ever, and this mission would set the tone for everything that followed. As they prepared to board their stealth ship, the weight of what they were about to do hit them. This wasn't just a mission. It was the start of a larger fight. This was about showing the Galactic Council that humanity wouldn't cower in the face of oppression. As the ship powered up and lifted off, the team exchanged tense glances. They had no illusions about the danger that lay ahead. But they had no choice. They had to strike now, before the Council could tighten their grip any further. The future of humanity depended on it. The ship jumped into hyperspace, disappearing into the stars as they set course for Rion. And as the light of Earth faded from their view, one thing was clear: this was just the beginning. The rebellion was far from over, and the Galactic Council had just made the worst mistake of their existence. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the Council's operations on Rion, the atmosphere grew heavier. The once dead planet now felt alive, buzzing with the mechanical hum of automated defenses and the eerie silence of soldiers moving behind the scenes. The landscape, which had once been desolate, now seemed almost suffocating. Every rock, every shadow felt like it was watching them. The rebels, however, didn't have the luxury of hesitation. There was no time to second-guess. They had to move fast, be sharp, and get out before the Council realized they were there. Victor, Alina, and the rest of the team moved in synchronized formation, blending into the shadows of the ruined buildings that had once been part of a bustling colony. The air smelled of rust and dust. The sound of distant engines echoed in the distance, reminding them how close they were to danger. Victor scanned the horizon. The Council's ships were grounded at the mining facility in the distance, and patrols were sporadic but deadly. They would need to be smart. No confrontations, no chances. The team was on a mission that could change the fate of the entire rebellion. They reached a safe house near the mining complex. Alina accessed a hidden terminal built into the rock, a relic from the early days of Council operations on the planet. She had expected it to be locked, and it was, but after a few moments of careful hacking, the terminal buzzed and came to life. The data she pulled up was clear. Inside the mining complex was the rare critical component they needed, a piece of technology that, if used correctly, could complete the hyperdrive engine and change the balance of power in the galaxy. Alina looked over her shoulder at Victor. "It's here. We just need to get inside, grab the component, and get out before the Council notices." Victor nodded. "We can do this, but we have to move quickly. We'll get in, retrieve the part, and leave before anyone knows we were here." With the plan set, the rebels continued forward toward the mining complex. The path was not easy. Their movements were deliberate, quiet, as they slipped through narrow alleys, hidden behind abandoned structures, avoiding the council patrols. Their every step was calculated. Each rebel was on edge, watching the skies, listening for any sign of movement. The council's heavy presence on the planet meant that every second counted. When they reached the perimeter of the mining facility, they crouched low, out of sight from the cameras and drones that patrolled the area. The entrance to the building was heavily guarded. They would need to disable the security system without alerting anyone. Elena tapped into her hidden comms unit and sent a signal to Riley, the team's military strategist who had been preparing the diversion. "I'll handle the guards," Riley whispered into his comms. "You just get to the vault. I'll hold them off as long as I can." Victor gave him a sharp nod. "No heroics, just get the job done." Riley's lips curled into a tight smile, and he silently moved to the side, preparing to put the diversion into action. A few seconds later, a loud explosion rocked the far end of the facility. The rebels flinched, but they didn't waste any time. The guards at the entrance rushed toward the source of the sound, leaving the gate vulnerable. "Now," Victor ordered, and they sprinted toward the entrance. The team moved with precision, their bodies tense but their minds focused. Elena led them to a series of locked doors. It was here, deep within the complex, that the piece of hyperdrive technology was stored. There was no time to waste. Elena quickly set to work hacking into the door's security system. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, working through layers of encrypted codes and firewalls. Sweat dripped down her brow as she concentrated, aware that every second could bring them closer to disaster. Come on," she muttered to herself as the timer on her terminal ticked down. Victor and the others kept watch, their weapons ready. They could hear the distant sounds of the council's guards shouting orders, searching for the source of the explosion. They didn't have much time. With a final keystroke, the door to the vault clicked open. The rebels rushed inside. Inside the vault, nestled behind layers of security, was the component, a sleek, metallic object about the size of a human hand, glowing faintly with blue light. It was what they had come for, the heart of the hyperdrive project, the key to Earth's future. Elena reached out and took the component, her hands shaking slightly. It was a beautiful piece of technology, a combination of council engineering and something else, something ancient, something that didn't belong to the council. Victor gave her a brief nod, signaling it was time to leave. But just as they turned to head back, a sound, loud, sharp, echoed through the facility. The explosion had done its job, but it also alerted the rest of the council forces. The doors slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. "Get ready," Victor ordered, as the team drew their weapons. "This is going to get ugly." The council's guards flooded into the vault, and the rebels knew their time was running out. It was a fight for their lives now, with the future of humanity hanging in the balance. In this part of the story, the rebels successfully infiltrate the council's mining facility, but their mission is far from over. The tension builds as they make their way through the complex, narrowly escaping detection. Elena's discovery of the critical component for the hyperdrive engine adds a new sense of urgency, but the team now faces the risk of being captured or killed before they can escape. The stakes are higher than ever, and the suspense continues to build as they prepare for the fight of their lives. The sound of heavy boots echoed down the narrow hallways of the vault as the council's guards closed in. The air was thick with tension as Victor and the rebels readied themselves. They had the component, the key to their survival, but now they had to fight their way out. It wasn't supposed to go down like this. This mission was supposed to be a clean grab and run, in and out before anyone knew they were there. But now, with the vault doors sealed and the council's soldiers closing in, it was a race against time. "Get to the exit," Victor hissed. "We'll hold them off as long as we can." The rebels positioned themselves in strategic spots, weapons raised, ready to make their stand. They weren't soldiers in the traditional sense, but they were a tight-knit group with one goal in mind: survival. Elena, her hands still clutching the vital hyperdrive component, glanced over at Victor, her face pale but resolute. The component was the most important thing, but she knew that without the team, humanity's rebellion would falter. "We can't afford to be caught," she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. This is our only shot." Victor met her eyes with a calm, unyielding gaze. "We don't have a choice." The first wave of guards stormed in, shouting orders as they opened fire. The rebels reacted instantly, returning fire with quick, calculated bursts. The sounds of weapons clashing, of metal meeting metal, filled the vault as sparks flew. Riley, the ex-soldier, was the first to engage. He took cover behind a steel column, and with his sharp eye, picked off one of the advancing guards before they could even raise their weapons. He was a natural, and his experience was invaluable in moments like this. "We've got to clear the way. Move, move, move." Riley barked as he advanced further into the vault, covering his comrades as they scrambled to fall back toward the exit. Elena was close behind, clutching the precious hyperdrive component in her arms. Her eyes darted from side to side, watching the conflict unfold with a mixture of fear and determination. She had never imagined herself in a firefight like this, but there was no turning back. Not now. Victor and the rest of the team moved with military precision, communicating silently through hand signals and brief words. They had trained for moments like this, but the real test had come much sooner than expected. The council's guards were relentless, heavily armed, and well-trained. They were everywhere. A bullet ricocheted off the wall near Victor's head, and he ducked behind a stack of crates. He could feel his pulse pounding in his ears. This wasn't just about escaping anymore. It was about surviving long enough to get to the ship. His mind raced as he assessed their situation. The guards were closing in from both sides. If they didn't make it to the exit in the next few minutes, they would be trapped, outnumbered, and surrounded. "Riley, we need that exit open now," Victor shouted, his voice urgent. Riley nodded as he moved toward the back of the room, where a large reinforced door led to the loading dock. They needed it to be open. The stealth ship was waiting just outside, but they couldn't afford to waste time or risk the council closing the exit before they made it out. But as Riley approached the door controls, his eyes widened in shock. The system was locked. "It's locked. I can't get it open. Can you bypass it?" Victor asked, pushing forward to help cover their retreat. Riley cursed under his breath. "I'm not a hacker, Victor. I need a minute." The guards were closing in faster now. They had moments before their position would be overrun. Victor's eyes darted around, calculating, searching for a solution. Without thinking, he reached into his pack and pulled out a small makeshift explosive, a last resort option. "Elena, you need to run," he yelled, pushing the component into her hands. "We'll cover you. Get to the ship." Elena hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering with doubt. She knew what this meant. If they blew the door open, there would be no turning back. They'd be exposed, out in the open. But her mission was clear. Humanity's future rested on her shoulders. With a quick nod, she turned and ran, sprinting toward the exit as fast as she could. Victor, Riley, and the others fought to buy her time. Bullets whizzed past them, but they held their ground. They were rebels, not soldiers, but they fought like warriors. Their objective was clear: to protect Elena and ensure she reached the ship, no matter the cost. As Elena neared the exit, she could feel the intensity of the battle around her. The sounds of gunfire and shouting were deafening, and for a brief moment, she was terrified. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Every step brought her closer to the ship, closer to hope. Finally, she reached the hatch to the loading dock. She glanced back at the team one last time before she pressed the activation button. The doors hissed open, and just as she saw the glimmer of their escape, a loud explosion rocked the facility. Victor's face was grim as the blast echoed in the distance, the impact sending debris flying. But the door was open. They had done it. "Go, Elena," Victor shouted. "Now." With no time to spare, Elena dashed toward the ship, her heart pounding in her chest. The rebels followed her, each one pushing themselves to their limit. They couldn't afford to look back. They didn't know how much time they had left. The sound of more guards closing in on them spurred them forward, and they finally made it to the ship's ramp. Elena climbed aboard first, with the others close behind. As the hatch slammed shut, Victor glanced around at the team. They were all there, but they were badly shaken. "We made it," Victor breathed, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Now we finish this." As the ship powered up and shot into the blackness of space, the rebel team knew they had struck a major blow against the Galactic Council. But the battle was far from over. They had stolen a piece of technology that could change the course of the war. And now, they would use it to take the fight directly to the heart of the Council's power. Humanity was no longer cowering in fear. They had just begun to rise. And the universe would soon learn that Earth's rebellion was a force to be reckoned with. As the ship rocketed through the blackness of space, the team's hearts still raced. The adrenaline that had fueled them through the assault on Rian hadn't worn off, and the weight of what they had just done began to sink in. They had the hyperdrive component, the most valuable piece of technology humanity could possess. It was a game changer. And with it, they now had a chance to fight back against the Galactic Council. But the cost was heavy. Victor stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the vast expanse of space. The stars were distant, cold, and indifferent, but his thoughts were consumed by the battle they had just survived. They had made it out, but for how long? The Council would retaliate, and they would retaliate hard. He had no illusions about the challenges ahead. But in the silence of space, as the ship sailed away from Rian, he allowed himself a moment of relief. They had done it. They had taken the first step. Elena, standing behind him, spoke quietly. "Do you think they know we're gone?" Victor didn't turn to face her. "They'll know soon enough. They'll track us. They'll come after us. But it doesn't matter. We've got what we came for." She nodded, her fingers gripping the component tightly in her hands. The weight of the object was heavy, but it wasn't just the physical weight. It was the weight of what it represented. This tiny piece of technology could change everything. It could give Earth the power to break the chains the Galactic Council had placed on them, to re-enter the space race and claim their place among the stars once again. But only if they could use it, only if they could survive long enough to make it happen. "What now?" Elena asked, her voice soft but filled with determination. "We head for the rebel fleet," Victor said, turning the ship toward their hidden base. "We need to integrate this component into our hyperdrive engine. Once it's done, we'll be able to move faster, strike harder, and maybe, just maybe, we can take the fight directly to the Council." Riley, who had been silent until now, let out a low whistle. "It's going to be a long road ahead, but I like where this is going. The Council won't know what hit them." "Yeah," Victor replied, "but we have to be smart. This isn't just about speed. This is about timing. We need to hit them hard and fast before they can regroup." As the ship surged forward, Elena couldn't help but look out the window, at the stars that seemed so distant, so unreachable. Earth had always been seen as insignificant by the rest of the galaxy, just a small, isolated planet, ignored and oppressed by the Council. But that was about to change. Humanity had just taken the first step toward reclaiming its place in the stars. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Elena said softly, her gaze never leaving the stars. "We're fighting for our future." Victor turned to look at her, his face stern but his eyes filled with the same unyielding resolve. "And we'll fight for it, every step of the way." The rebel fleet was their destination, a hidden force waiting for their signal. They had a plan, and now, with the stolen hyperdrive component in hand, they had the power to execute it. But the Council would be coming for them. There was no question. The rebellion was no longer a shadow war. It had escalated into open conflict. The ship's engines hummed steadily as they crossed into a new sector of space, and the crew began their preparations. They needed to get the hyperdrive system up and running, and fast. But there was something more, something bigger at stake. The Council had just made a huge mistake by underestimating humanity. And now, Earth's rebellion would make sure the universe would never forget the cost of that mistake. As the ship flew toward the rebel fleet, Victor's thoughts drifted briefly to the battles yet to come. He knew there would be losses. There always were in war, but he had faith in the people he fought alongside. They were humans, and they would fight with everything they had. The Council had underestimated them before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. Victor's mind flicked to the future, the inevitable confrontation with the Council, the epic battles that would follow, and the uncertain road ahead. But one thing was certain: the rebellion had just gained a massive advantage. The first strike had been delivered. Now, they just had to see it through to the end. As the ship moved deeper into the unknown, leaving Rian behind, one thought filled Victor's mind. Humanity was no longer the hunted. It was time for the Council to feel the heat of Earth's anger. Time for them to realize that Earth had no intention of staying out of the stars, no intention of bowing to the Galactic Council's rule. And humanity's rebellion had only just begun. The tension is at its peak in this final part. The rebels, having secured the hyperdrive component, are now on a path to put it to use and fight back against the Galactic Council. Victor and the team, although battered and shaken, know they've taken the first step in turning the tide of the war. Their journey is far from over, and the challenges ahead are monumental. Yet with every challenge comes a new hope, a new strength that binds them together. The suspense continues to build as the rebellion is about to take on the universe, and the Council won't know what hit them.